On the most holy day of the year for those of Jewish faith, what twisted belief has led the suspect on the ground to make them a target?
Get back! If you're not involved, move back! Get away! Somebody stay with casualties! Everybody else! He has a ball! Go away!
He's got a bob on him!
He's already driven a car at people outside the synagogue in Crumpsall and attacked others with a knife. At least one victim is still lying on the ground. Now police take no chances given his third potential weapon, the suspected bomb around his waist. The gunshots proved fatal, but so did his attack. 2 victims dead, 4 others injured. Here you can see the suspect's face. He's been named tonight as Jihad Al-Shamie, a 35-year-old British citizen of Syrian descent. Behind him, we've blurred the worshippers in the windows. For all the attackers' efforts to take more lives, security staff likely saved them by stopping him from getting inside the synagogue. As others were taken to safety, who tonight still can't get back into their homes.
Initially, seeing a guy stood on the top of the stairs, and then as the police have approached, they've run into the gate of the synagogue, outside the vicinity though, but inside the gate. Shot him straight away.
It was hours before police could get near the suspect to identify him. First, bomb disposal teams had to be called in, before what sounded like a controlled explosion. In this picture, you can see a knife lying near the attacker's head, with the suspected bomb to his right. Just one clue as to his motive.
This attack has been officially declared as a terrorist incident, and the investigation is now being led by counter-terrorist police. As has been confirmed by CT policing, we believe that the identity of the offender has been established, but until we are certain of this fact, it is premature to set out this detail at this juncture.
We captured what appeared to be further arrests in the surrounding streets. Police have confirmed they've detained 3 more suspects. This part of Manchester is home to Britain's second largest Jewish population, but it's home to other communities too. As in many cities, the relations, the potential tensions between them have been a cause of acute concern in recent years. The fear that global events could make people local targets of hatred. This afternoon, the Prime Minister flew home from a European summit in Denmark to chair an emergency meeting and reassure the Jewish community.
To every Jewish person in this country, I also want to say this. I know how much fear you will be holding inside of you. I really do. And so, on behalf of our country, I express my solidarity, but also my sadness that you still have to live with these fears. Nobody should have to do that.
Yom Kippur is a time of repentance for Jewish people, of confessing sins. But as they worship in Crumpsall tonight, who will atone for the violence committed against them?
Well, Ben's here with me now. He's been following the latest on the police investigation this evening. And Ben, we've had quite a lot of information in the past hour or so. What more have we learned?
Yeah, really substantial update from counter-terrorism policing in the last hour or so. Confirmation of the identity of the attacker, of course, the most significant detail. Police say although formal identification hasn't taken place, they do believe that he is this 35-year-old man, Jihad Al-Shamie. They say he is a British citizen of Syrian descent. We understand from what we've been able to find out about him that his family have lived in Greater Manchester for more than 30 years. Police have been seen searching his family home this evening. We understand he is a father. He appears to have worked as a tutor, teaching English and computer programming. We also understand his father is a trauma surgeon who has worked in war zones for a variety of aid agencies. Now, police say from what they know at the moment, there is no record of any previous referrals to the government's anti-radicalisation programme, Prevent. Meanwhile, tonight, police have confirmed they have 3 further suspects in custody. That's 2 men in their their 30s and a woman in her 60s. They've been arrested on the suspicion of commission, preparation and instigation of acts of terrorism. We've also had some more information about the injuries suffered by those who are still in hospital. They are 3 men. We're told one suffered a stab wound, one was hit by the car. The third, police say, took himself to hospital with an injury that they believe may have been suffered when officers stopped the attacker, but they haven't confirmed the nature of that injury. Still a huge amount of police presence and activity, not least here, of course, but also at 2 other locations, including the one we saw pictures of just now, that are linked to those arrests tonight.
All right, Ben, thank you very much indeed for that. Well, because of the day, the holy day of Yom Kippur includes withdrawing from the outside world. Many Jewish people have been out of touch with mainstream or social media. Only with nightfall and reconnection has the news from here reached some. If the attacker's intention was to divide and provoke, he looks to have achieved the opposite. There's been universal condemnation of his attack and indeed a coming together of the many strands of society in this great and multicultural city.
After a day spent without mobile phones or digital devices, many Jews emerged from prayer this evening unaware of the horrors that had unfolded at a nearby synagogue. Mark Levy's father was inside when the offender launched his attack.
I found out when my phone started going extremely busy. Ordinarily, Jewish people would not use their phone on this day. Immediately you worry about your family.
Was your father actually in the synagogue when it happened?
He was in the synagogue when it happened.
Yom Kippur is the most holy day in the Jewish calendar, and Rafi Bloom was one of hundreds heading to the synagogue for worship.
I had a phone call from a friend of mine to say there's been a terrorist attack at our synagogue. Stay away, make sure you call your wife and your children and grandchildren and tell them to stay away.
How is the Jewish community in Manchester feeling today?
Scared, terrified, and it's making the overwhelming majority of us question whether we have a future in this country for ourselves, for our children and our grandchildren.
He tells me how every Jewish school, every synagogue already has security, and those patrols have now been stepped up.
We're the only faith community in the UK that is required or that needs to have that, and that in and of itself tells a story. As a community, we've been expecting this for 2 years, but still when it happens, that sense of shock and fear is palpable.
But Manchester is a city that's been shaken by terror before and stood defiant. And today its people wrap themselves in blankets and each other.
Greater Manchester will never stand aside when one of our communities is attacked. We ask everyone to show solidarity to the Jewish community this weekend.
And while the shock continues to sink in, Simon, who's just 16, says we must look to the future.
I think if anything it will make the community stronger and pull us together even more, and it will show that every time we get knocked down we'll come back up.
And in every corner of this community, that togetherness is clear to see. Amy Welch, News at 10, Crumpsall.
And Robert joins me now from Downing Street. And Robert, we've heard the Prime Minister saying quite a lengthy address this evening that he will do everything in his power to guarantee security for Britain's Jewish communities. But what does that actually mean in the coming days in practice?
Well, he wants to show solidarity with the community. He and his wife, I understand, were at synagogue at Shul this evening. She is of Jewish origin. I'll tell you a little bit about what they decided at the Cobra meeting. That's the meeting of senior ministers, which takes place when there is an emergency of this sort. One of the things they were intent on doing is put out as much information about the murderer as quickly as possible to prevent the kind of absolutely toxic conspiracy theories we saw after the terrible Southport atrocities. Now, they have said that we've had a sort of background briefing which says that the man we know was a British national of Syrian descent. I think the relevant people in terms of this very heated immigration debate is he entered the UK as a very small child, granted British citizenship in 2006 as are minor, so those are some of the sort of basic facts that our politicians will be grappling with. The other thing they decided at Cobra was to significantly increase the police presence at synagogues, but also strikingly at mosques, because they are fearful of far-right retaliations on the Muslim community. There is a bit of a worry about the police being stretched. There is a rally in London in support of the prescribed Palestine Action Group, a group classified as terrorists, and there will have to be a large police presence there as well. Then there is this issue signalled by the Prime Minister, but also that I talked to a number of other members of his cabinet about, which is how does the government combat the rise of anti-Semitism? And when you talk to ministers, it's not as though they haven't been aware of it, but the sort of gravity of it it seemed to me as only really just really dawned on them. One of them talked to me about how we are seeing this across the world. We've seen a rise in violence against Jews in America, in Canada, across Europe. One of the things, I mean, as a Jew, that I pointed out to a couple of ministers is there is this elision, this conflation in many people's minds between Jews and Israelis, and somehow Jews are regarded as supporters of Netanyahu and what he's doing in Gaza. And I mean, this is a form of anti-Semitism. I mean, and the thing I think that we have to sort of bear in mind, I mean, we've seen this awful rise of violence against Jews. We've also seen the terrible actions of Putin in Ukraine. We haven't seen a wave of attacks on Russians outside, in the rest of the world. So, governments everywhere are failing to grapple with or deal with this new wave of anti-Semitism. I heard fine words from ministers tonight, but not yet anything that even feels like a plan.
OK, Robert, from Downing Street, thank you very much indeed. As the Prime Minister made clear, police have been placed on duty outside synagogues across the country. Reassurance, perhaps, but the shock and fear that has seized this part of Manchester has spread to Jewish communities far from here. It seems a dread that the divisions of the Middle East would end up imported here has come to pass.
Tonight, a Jewish community already on edge, now confronting its deepest anxiety, with synagogues across Britain forced to tighten security. Visible, unsettling reminders of a threat felt nationwide.
I'm feeling devastated, I'm feeling appalled, I'm feeling scared. I'm speaking to friends and family across the UK. I know that those sentiments and feelings are replicated in many Jewish communities across the country. People that think, like myself, it could have been me. I went to synagogue today on a number of different occasions, and it could have happened at my synagogue.
For many, today's attack is the culmination of a pattern of abuse and hate crime they feel has been intensifying since October the 7th, 2 years ago. Latest figures from the organisation which monitors anti-Semitism in the UK show in 2023, the same year as the Hamas attacks, it recorded nearly 4,300 anti-Jewish hate incidents, a record high. More than 3,500 were recorded in 2024, a trend that continued this year, with over 1,500 reported in just the first 6 months of 2025.
For the Jewish community, today's events in Manchester are their worst fears realised, that a rise in anti-Semitism has now given way to a violent terrorist attack against them.
This is the kind of terrorist attack that sadly we have been preparing for and expecting for a very, very long time. I don't think it's been given enough attention, enough priority, enough seriousness. Hopefully, sadly, tragically, the deadly attack today might change that.
Despite the extra patrols and the extra security, this is a community that still feels unsafe and at risk in the places that were meant to be a sanctuary. Sejal Karia, News at 10.
Well, events here today have been followed around the world, not least, of course, in Israel. John is in Tel Aviv this evening. John, good evening to you. What's been said by the leadership there?
Good evening, Paul. Shortly after sunset heralded the end of Yom Kippur here in Israel. This country's leadership, in the form of its president, its prime minister and its foreign minister, all issued statements condemning the Manchester atrocity, expressing sympathy to the victims' families and sticking the boot into the British government in varying degrees. Of course, all this comes at a time when Anglo-Israeli relations are at an all-time low, with the Israeli government particularly incensed by Keir Starmer's decision to recognise a Palestinian state. Tonight, I think the most interesting comments came from Israel's head of state, President Herzog, who revealed that just a few days ago he wrote a letter to the king expressing his deep concern about what he called rising anti-Semitism and rising anti-Israeli hatred in the UK and some Commonwealth countries, including Australia and Canada. 10 days ago, President Herzog condemned the UK, Australia and Canada for recognising a Palestinian state and said that only emboldened the forces of darkness. Not surprisingly, none of the Israeli politicians who issued statements tonight made any possible connection between the reputational damage the Gaza war has done to Israel around the world and rising anti-Semitism in the UK and elsewhere around the world.
OK, John, from Tel Aviv, thank you very much indeed. Well, in the past few minutes, we've obtained a photo believed to be Jihad Al-Shamie. He's the 35-year-old British man of Syrian descent who attacked the synagogue this morning and was later shot dead by police. That first image coming into us this evening. Well, I'm joined now by Josh Simons, Labour MP for Makerfield and Parliamentary Secretary for the Cabinet Office. Josh, thank you so much for joining me this evening. Firstly, I believe your family have attended this synagogue fairly regularly. I can only imagine what you must be feeling about this morning's events.
Well, thanks, Paul. I appreciate that. I've attended festivals, celebration, bar mitzvahs at this synagogue. They live not far away. And, you know, my family came to this country about a century ago because they were fleeing violence, hate, persecution. And for that to be here, in the place that we've made our home, the place we feel safe and secure, is sad, it's scary, it's frightening. And, you know, I just keep thinking about my kids, frankly, and all of us will be hugging our children that little bit closer tonight.
Absolutely, and for all the sort of messages of solidarity that we're hearing tonight, the coming together of communities, given the profile of the attacker, are you concerned that actually, you know, we're at a fractious time at the moment, we've seen febrile scenes for months across our country. Is this going to feed some of that tension?
Of course I'm concerned. You know, how could you not be after what's happened today and after the conversations I've had with my family and my friends who live around here. But I also think it's really important to say what happened today, that man that you've just shown a photo of, he was a terrorist. It was a terrorist act. And what that means is that he chose on this special day, on Yom Kippur, one of the most special days in the Jewish calendar, to come down the road to that synagogue and to murder Jewish people on the streets of Manchester, on the streets of Britain, for no other reason than they're Jewish. That's terrorism. Terrorism has no place in this country. And however febrile and difficult things are in politics or in our communities at the moment, terrorism is a whole different thing that we will never allow.
You mentioned politics there, and obviously we've heard a very sober tone from the likes of the Home Secretary, the Prime Minister, the Mayor of Manchester today. Do you worry that the rhetoric in politics isn't helpful? Maybe this is the wake-up call to politicians of all stripes to step back from some of the more extreme debate that we've been hearing in recent months and years.
Well, we can always do more as politicians to calm things down. But again, you know, I really think we've got to separate the kind of debate we have in our public life with our communities. You know, people live next to each other on these streets, Muslims, Jews, white British people. And in the end, the cohesion of our communities, whether we know our neighbour, whether we respect them, whether we love them and have relationships with them, that's not about politicians. It's about every single one of us. And it's about all of us going out and taking the effort to get to know our neighbours, to go to our community clubs, to make sure we drop off our kids at school. And there's always more we can do to bind our communities and our countries together, but it's also incumbent on all of us to do that work.